in this Thursday morning, including Nigeria's most influential newspaper, Leadership. Let's head up to Leadership and see the offerings this Thursday. Leadership's leading story says new defense minister says no negotiation with terrorists. New defense minister says no negotiation with terrorists. Akpabio confirms intense U.S. pressure on Nigeria as Senate clears Musa. The story is on page 4 of Leadership newspaper. Of course, yesterday we watched the live broadcast of the new defense minister being screened by the Senate. And he was actually cleared at the end of the day. And during the screening, the new defense minister says no negotiation with terrorists. He also made so many other revelations concerning the death of our Brigadier General. And that's what some of the papers are leading with this Thursday. Central Bank removes cash deposit limit, raises weekly withdrawal cap. Over 2.5 million new voters fully registered in ongoing exercise coming from INEC, the Electoral Commission. Rubio threatens visa bans over alleged Christian genocide in Nigeria. The story is on page 4 of Leadership. It's also one of the leading stories on all the papers we have on our lineup this Thursday. Rubio threatens visa bans over alleged Christian genocide in Nigeria. CSOs condemn report describing Kano as new frontier of bandits. We also have the picture of the Executive Director of Finance Corporate Services Development Bank of Nigeria, DBN, Mrs. Ijoma Ozulumba, Vice Chairman, Leadership Group Limited, Michael Pere, Managing Director, CEO, Development Bank of Nigeria, Dr. Tony Okpanachi, and Director, Leadership Group Limited, Abraham Nda Azaya. During the presentation of the Leadership Award nomination letter to the Managing Director, DBN, as Banker of the Year 2025 in Abuja recently. Congratulations to DBN. That's the picture cover on Leadership this Thursday. We move ahead to the masthead of Leadership, where we have Export Processing Zones Authority 6-10-year tax relief for oil investors. Export Processing Zones Authority 6-10-year tax relief for oil investors. And that takes us to the stories about the masthead of Leadership. Contractors block Federal Ministry of Finance, demand settlement of 500 billion naira debt. I feel your pain, Bago tells parents of abducted school children. Bago, the governor of Niger State. And that also concludes review of front headline story on Leadership. We move to page 3 of Leadership, where we have our stand. Today's stand is on accountability in military operations. Accountability in military operations. Today's stand in Leadership newspaper. We will take some excerpts from that leading stand today in Leadership. In the last 15 years since Nigeria started fighting insurgency, there has been no time when the call for open accountability in the way security operations have been conducted as at this moment. And this time the trigger is the suspicious circumstances surrounding the recent mass adoption of students of Government Girls Comprehensive Secondary School, MAGA, in Danko Wasagu local government area, Kebbi State. The decision of the security agencies guiding the school to withdraw from its premises shortly before bandits raided the school, shot dead 2 officials, and kidnapped 24 school girls, despite credible intelligence that the school was in danger of an imminent terrorist attack, has left many Nigerians confused about what to think. The Kebbi State Governor, Dr. Mohammed Nasir Idris, has been the most vocal in demanding a probe into who gave the order for troops withdrawal, and has escalated this call to the National Assembly and the Nigerian Labour Congress, both of whom visited to commiserate with his government over the incident. While receiving a delegation from the National Assembly led by Speaker of the House of Representatives, Right Honorable Tajuddin Abbas, at Government House Bani Kebbi, the state capital, the governor said the troops deployed to the school left at 3 a.m. and at exactly 3:45 a.m. the school girls were abducted. The governor asked. The reason for the personnel's departure was based on orders. We raised questions as a government. Who gave the order for troops to withdraw at that critical time? What is the reason? Since the incident, we have been asking questions, but have received no answers. We'll move towards the stand in leadership stand, where the paper actually takes a stand on its editorial. Like I always explain, our stand is the editorial, and that is the view, the collective view of the paper for the day. Every paper has a stand daily. And let's move over to the stand, and it's towards the conclusion of the stand in our stand. It says Nigeria can win the war against terrorism, but only if it's fought with transparency, decisiveness, and integrity. Troops must be held accountable for their actions. Commanders must answer for their orders, and the system must be cleansed of indecision, corruption, and sabotage. The circumstances surrounding the MAGA school girls' abduction should galvanize the country into action. The released school girls widely published testimonies that they were fed well and treated nicely by the terrorists, demand that the probe of the incident is thorough and transparent if the government and the military hope to retain the trust of the masses. Nigerians deserve a security apparatus that acts swiftly, fairly, and fearlessly. If the government does not rise to this challenge, it risks not only more tragic abductions, but the erosion of public trust that undergirds the entire fight against terrorism. We just saw some excerpts from today's stand in Leadership newspaper, accountability in military operations. From today's stand, we move to the back page of Leadership, where we have Being Blunt with Muazu Elaize. Every Thursday, he writes on the back page of Leadership. Muazu Elaize is the group managing director of Leadership Newspaper Limited. And today is writing on understanding the Tinubu presidency. Understanding the Tinubu presidency. Today's Being Blunt with Muazu Elaize. In quote, he said, even the most ardent supporters of the president cannot justify the inclusion of some names on the list. Of course, he's talking about the ambassadorial list, which has some names that is not sitting well with some wide cross-section of Nigerians. 2 years later, despite many ministers having delivered little in terms of governance or contribution to the administration's public standing, no meaningful action has been taken. Those who left did so for political reasons or under the guise of health concerns, such as the former defense minister Abubakar Bajaru. We also have the resignation of the former minister of Science and Technology and Innovation, who also resigned due to some issues surrounding his certificates. But that is about that on today's column, back page column with Muazu Elaize. Before we leave the back page, let's visit Ghana Must Go. On the news, Dele Momodu says 2027 opposition not ready. And of course, Ghana Must Go asks, you are no longer with them? This is a question Dele Momodu has to answer. He's also on that note, we draw the curtain on today's review of Leadership newspaper. Don't forget to log into the website of Leadership for continuation of those news, www.leadership.ng. We move ahead to the next paper we have, to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is Vanguard newspaper. It's talking about the screening of the new defense minister yesterday, General Christopher Mustafa. And Vanguard says no more negotiation, ransom payment to terrorists. Defense Minister General Mustafa. Rep seek transparent prosecution of terrorism-related cases. Senate backs death penalty for kidnappers, financials, informants, others. Open trial of terrorists won't change anything, according to lawyers. Those are the kickers to the leading story on today's Vanguard. No more negotiation, ransom payment to terrorists, coming from the Defense Minister, General Musa. 4 trillion naira debt. Angry contractors besiege Finance Ministry, demand 760 billion naira payment. Government attack Abia governor's team in Imo. Shettima to governors overcome challenges, not explain them. Shettima to governors overcome challenges, not explain them. We'll move to the masthead of Vanguard. CBN removes limit on cash deposit, raises weekly withdrawal limit. Niger abductees will be rescued soon, coming from Governor Baku of the state. U.S. issues visa ban on Nigerians involved in anti-Christian violence. Same leading story on Leadership. FEC OK's 2026 to 2028 MTEA projects 34.33 trillion naira revenue. And with that, we come to the end of the review of front headline stories on Vanguard this Thursday. For more, visit the website of Vanguard newspaper. We move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is Nigerian Tribune. Nigerian Tribune's leading story says U.S. to restrict visas for Nigerians violating religious freedom. U.S. to restrict visas for Nigerians violating religious freedom. Reps ask federal government to name sponsors of terrorism banditry. Want terrorism-related prosecution to be expeditious, transparent. Advocate establishment of terrorism, kidnapping, banditry tribunal during constitution review process. These are kickers to the leading story on today's Nigerian Tribune. U.S. to restrict visas for Nigerians violating religious freedom. It's also this leading story, one of the leading stories we had in the papers for review before it, talking about Vanguard and Leadership newspaper. Ogun, one of largest contributors to non-oil revenue coming from the governor, Abiodun, presents 1.669 trillion naira proposed budget for 2026 to Assembly. Osun withheld local government funds. Supreme Court delivers judgment tomorrow. 4 persons killed in fresh attack in Kogi. 38 Eruku abducted worshippers return home. Another leading story on the cover of Nigerian Tribune. We have transformed agriculture through institutional reforms, coming from Makinde, the governor of Oyo State. Senate summons finance, education, defense ministers over $30 million faith safe school initiative. That story runs on page 16 of Nigerian Tribune. Senate summons finance, education, defense ministers over $30 million faith safe school initiative. NEC OK's 100 billion naira for rehabilitation of security training institutions. That story is on page 3 of Nigerian Tribune. And that takes us to the stories about the masthead of Nigerian Tribune. Musa assures of winning war on insecurity as Senate confirms him defense minister. CBN raises weekly cash withdrawal limit to 500,000 naira, scraps cash deposit cap. FEC approves 2026-2028 MTEA projects 34.33 trillion naira revenue. Oil production ceiling at 1.8 million barrel bid. Proposes $64 per barrel benchmark. And that also concludes review of front headline stories of Nigerian Tribune this Thursday. For more, log into the website of of Nigerian Tribune. Now we move ahead to the next paper we have on our lineup, and that is the Punch newspaper. The Punch says abduction crisis. NACS asks federal government to name terrorism financiers. Lawmakers demand guides for schools, worship halls. New defense minister probes Kebbi kidnap army general's death. Fallout of yesterday's screening of the new defense minister, General Christopher Musa. Miners reject governor's 6-month mining ban plan. Of course, it's no longer news. The Northern Governors Forum came out recently to ask federal government to demand that the federal government suspends mining exploration activities in the zone for at least 6 months. And in reaction to that, which is on the cover of the Punch newspaper today, this Thursday, miners reject that 6-month mining ban plan. AMCON repays 3.6 trillion naira loan to CBN. Abiodun presents 1.67 trillion naira 2026 appropriation bill to Ogun Assembly. Senate questions ministers on $30 million school safety project. 22 Lagos PSP operators fired for underperformance. CBN ends cash deposit limits for bank customers. Federal government unveils 54 trillion naira budget as debt service gobs 16 trillion naira. Voter register review begins as INEC closes registration. U.S. company withdraws Nigeria's presidential jet from sale. And lastly, beside the cover of the Punch newspaper, beside the masthead of the Punch newspaper, U.S. moves visa bans over alleged Christian killings in Nigeria. That story concludes the review of front headline stories on the Punch newspaper this morning. For more, don't forget to log into the website of the Punch newspaper. Lastly, on our lineup this Thursday, we have the Daily Times. Daily Times leading story says Defense Minister Musa confirmed to probe death of General Uba, withdrawal of security from Kebbi School. And of course, we have the picture of General Musa in the dock being screened yesterday in the upper chamber of the National Assembly. Senate insists on death penalty for perpetrators, financiers, informers of kidnapping. And that story is on page 10 of the Daily Times. Atop the masthead of the Daily Times, we have Remi Tinubu empowers 250 PWDs, that is people living with disabilities, with 50 million naira business grants. Reps accuse discos of sabotage, deceit on power sector infrastructure. And lastly, on the cover of the Daily Times, NLC backs Joe Hesu, threatens nationwide strike over non-implementation of CONHES. And that brings to a close the review of front headline stories on Daily Times newspaper this Thursday. For more, log into the website of the Daily Times newspaper. Well, viewers, it's also on this note we conclude today's Inside Nigeria on Leadership Television. You've been watching the program. Don't forget to log into the website, all the papers reviewed, and of course, Leadership newspaper for continuation of those headline stories. Tomorrow, Friday, is another date with us on the program. And don't forget to join us on all social media handles for news on the hour. My name is Winifred Webo. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for watching. For sponsorship and advert placements, please contact 080 36